Thank you for joining. My name is Jason Etter, and I'm the Director of Business Development at Profound Cloud. Today's session is covering how to protect your business with the cloud, along with the implications cloud technology has on your organization's IT. I'd also like to make you aware this session will be recorded, and if interested, I'd be happy to share it with you to distribute to your team. Cyber attacks are on the rise. In 2014 alone, Citigroup, E-Trade Financial Corp, Fidelity, Regions Financial Corp, HSBC, Bank of West, and payroll services provider Automated Data Processing Incorporated, JP Morgan Chase, and dozens, if not hundreds more financial firms have been probed by malicious hackers. This comes from an October report by the Information Security Media Group. Additionally, hundreds of millions of consumers hundreds of millions of dollars are now being spent in haste to rectify and restore the damage done to consumers within the hacks at Target, Michaels, Home Depot, and most recently Sony. The New York Times reports that successful attacks have infiltrated networks and collected gigabytes of data. This includes critical consumer data such as checking and savings account information, social security numbers, etc. I'm not trying to use scare tactics here. I'm simply stating the reality of the importance focusing and hardening your information security framework is. In particular, business owners and CEOs are in a panic at the level of responsibility and expertise required for security and IT leadership is escalating by the second. The Wall Street Journal has reported numerously that organizations are facing a shortage of people who are skilled in risk and compliance talent, and the risk and compliance talent they need to ensure is very difficult to come by. There's several pieces of documentation, and in order to organize all the regulations that come to call, you have to there's a very specific skill set that's required. These previous breaches were not only has an economic impact on a devastating level, but also it has a professional impact on the careers of executives. When the media and customer base looks for blame, they point a finger at the individuals responsible for overseeing the assessment, management, and implementation of information security, whether it be the owner, the CEO, or CIO, or CISO. Without security leadership or a specific security framework in place, it's obvious why CEOs and owners are becoming deeply alarmed about these reports on cybercrime. Security is paramount today, but more complex and more difficult than ever. The risk is higher because everything's online. People are using their mobile devices to access everything, pay bills, shop, things of that nature. Technology is more difficult and more complex than what you maybe more traditional on-premise infrastructures. And work has changed. Users have new expectations. They will bypass your tools and security measures if you don't meet their usability expectations. People are getting USB drives. They're using personal Dropbox accounts. They're sending information out there. And that means that you're not organizing your information from an administrative standpoint. And in this slide, which I use a lot, it's the basis behind where we are today in terms of accessing information. I'm not in any sense blaming mobile devices for our recent surge in attacks, but rather using it to explain why it's so pertinent that organizations modernize their security best practices. So, how can you get the best of both worlds? Your staff yearns for the best of breed technology, while your IT instincts are to block everything so there's little to protect. It's easier to manage that way, especially when you have limited resources. But is that a win for the evolution of your organization? Well, of course not. Whatever you choose, it seems that there's a loss. If you say yes to new technologies, your users bring on chaos. If you say no to where the technology is going, then you lock down your users and lose much of their support and slow their business down. So consider this. A 2012 Forrester study on 9,766 global workers report that 1 in 3 workers work outside of the office regularly, and 3 in 4 access company data on their own personal device. Additionally, a 2013 Gartner study estimates that 38% of companies expect to stop providing devices to workers by 2016, and 85% of companies will be providing bring your own device options by 2016. The growth of organizations working across the globe on devices that aren't mandated or administered is further evidence of the importance of policy, education, and the investment in third-party tools. So what does this have to do with security? Everything. A Kaspersky report highlights that 77% of websites that contain malicious content are completely legitimate websites and that have been compromised by cybercriminals. It's the commitment to being preventative, encrypting, and having a disaster recovery plan that gets overlooked. It's this type of unknown that is the harsh reality of cybersecurity. More so, attackers, they're clever. Enterprises are faced with bait and switch tactics like DDoS attacks. A company's website will be targeted and purposely disrupt the organization. Then the attackers don't necessarily need to bring down the site, but what they want is the distraction. While the organization's IT staff scrambles to solve the DDoS attack, the attackers are more heavily focused on breaking into the company's network, which will go unnoticed due to the focus on the company's site. Furthermore, let's not discount what we don't know. I mentioned the Target, which was there was part of a Target and Michaels. Well, there was also the Heartbleed attack. This hack actually exposed an OpenSSL vulnerability that potentially allowed attackers to extract 64 kilobyte batches of memory at random. What is most alarming, though, was the unknown. As pointed out by internet security evangelist and CEO of LastPass, a highly successful one-password-for-all encryption application, Joe Segrist, he said, "You don't know what exactly was in the payload of those Heartbleed messages. It could be usernames and passwords. It could be financial data. It could be the SSL certificate, which is especially bad." And then I think he summarized the heart of the matter, no pun intended, by later saying it was definitely the holy expletive moment. Although cybercrime security breaches increased more than 23%, and the cost of those breaches has more than doubled, this is only the tip of the iceberg. This data released by the FBI is misleading because companies generally do not report when they have been breached. Companies simply do not want the world to know they've been breached for fear that their stock, value, brand, reputation will be negatively impacted. What that means is that there's actually more breaches happening than we even know of. So where do we start? Performing a Google search on designing a security framework or for top security applications, or even typing in secure your business will deliver an overwhelming list of results. I'd like to argue that although the previous statements are alarming, utilizing the right technology and best practices will actually make mobility and cloud computing an extremely desirable IT experience. This technology changes the way we think about security, and that's a good thing. But all of this requires a very specific and strategic plan. Here's the starting point. If you're going to or have gone cloud, and you're of the mindset that cloud computing is the future of technology, let's discuss the 7 questions every organization should ask regarding IT security and designing a plan or a framework. You want to know if you've performed a risk-minded audit. And I'm going to get into greater detail about that, but that's probably the most important piece of this, understanding what it is that you're dealing with, your infrastructure, your devices, the software out there. What are people accessing and authenticating to? Is there any state or federal regulations your organization must follow? It's very important to know these things as they are dependent on your business success, and also there are criminal and federal implications should you not. What are your immediate priorities for securing your business data? We're going to get deeper into this, but the idea is these priorities need to be unified and agreed upon throughout all of leadership. What are you going to do to educate your staff on security? This, besides the actual audit itself, in my opinion, is the height of these 7 questions and what is critical to ensuring success. What have you invested in to monitor machines accessing your data? What have you invested in to monitor inbound network traffic? And what is your disaster recovery plan? So let's start with this first one. Have you performed a risk-minded audit? This is the catalyst for all preceding questions. In order to determine what is lacking within your IT infrastructure, you have to perform an audit. The SANS Group is universally known as a staple holding security best practices intact. They've designed a list of 20 critical controls that organizations should be mindful of. The recommendations range from designing an inventory of devices and software to application and network security, along with penetration testing. Don't be mistaken, though. Although it's only 20, the recommendations are vast and perhaps equally, if not more overwhelming, as a simple Google search results will give you. Each critical control has vast and in-depth lists of requirements that, if not, that really put a heavy load on your resources. And if you're already short-staffed and that's why you're deciding on having this plan, it could be a challenge for you to follow all 20 of these critical controls. In my own research, I came across a very interesting webinar hosted by Dr. Eric Cole, who is a SANS fellow, actually, and key participant in the development of the 20 critical security controls. And during the webinar, he said something really interesting. He said that he would rather you pick 5 vulnerabilities in which there's a real threat to your critical assets, such as intellectual property, pertinent data that relates to your organization, than the 500 low-hanging fruit vulnerabilities in which there's no threat and minimal impact. Further, he points out that email clients and web browsers are the source of most evil. Those are the entry points for damage, he says. He also gets more specific that it's the executable files and email attachments, macros and Office documents, and embedded HTML that are exceptionally high risk and typically is the activity that most organizations just don't need. There are applications out there that allow you to no longer need to send attachments and files through email, and it's unnecessary due to the file servers and internal systems that are already in place, and also some cloud technology that I would be happy to talk to you more about. So the next thing is, are there any state or federal regulations your organization must follow? With attacks on the rise, consumers are more conscious of their privacy. So that's why federal regulations such as the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act of 1999 and PCI data security were designed to reduce the exposures, access, and transfer of consumer bank information. For example, look what happened to Target and Michaels and all that credit card information, JP Morgan Chase. People had access to all that information, and it was really pertinent and private data. For example, the GLBA was enacted to limit and reduce the transfer of your personal financial information. This requires financial institutions to disclose their privacy policies on the sharing of non-public personal information. Although electronic communication, such as email, wasn't nearly as prevalent as it is today, these rules still apply, and it is recommended to safeguard against the transmission of messages. This will be addressed tactically, or should be addressed tactically, within your plans of your audit in your security framework. One more comprehensive regulation is PCI, which we talked about for a second. Where GLBA was to reduce and disclose privacy policies, PCI is a standard placed on organizations with financial data to protect cardholder information. The PCI data security standard covers 12 requirements. Build and maintain a secure network, protect cardholder data, ensure the maintenance of vulnerability management programs, implement strong access control measures, regularly monitor and test networks, and ensure the maintenance of information security policies. That's a lot, right? Well, these are things that you have to consider, especially if you're handling consumer information and financial information. These are things that you should really be mindful of because, quite frankly, your business could get in a lot of trouble, regardless of your size, should this information not be followed well. However, seeking third-party applications, though, if you're looking for vendors and such, I was talking a little bit about web applications and different cloud. We're talking about cloud technology here, so you're looking at a third party essentially to manage your information. And I'm going to talk a lot about how secure and really adaptive to the fast-paced moving technology landscape that we're dealing with. But bear in mind that even though the third-party applications uphold standards, this does not alleviate the burden of you doing your own audit and cross-checking and performing of internal audits for your own security framework once put into action. For example, the Office of Comptroller of the Currency, or OCC, it's an independent bureau that is part of the U.S. Department of Treasury. And to note, while looking into applications and vendors, the OCC makes it clear that the use of third parties does not diminish the responsibility of its board of directors and senior management to ensure that the activity is performed in a safe and sound manner in compliance with applicable laws. So it's wonderful to embrace technologies such as third parties that do provide and harden the security implications that you might be concerned about regarding federal regulations or just state laws. But don't think that just negates you from the responsibility altogether. Let's jump to the next one. What are your immediate priorities for securing your business data? Now, this is very important because, unfortunately, there is a major and common problem, which within organizations is a ununified agreement between IT, auditors, security, and leadership. You see this many times. There's different departments that have different responsibilities that are all trying to get one thing done, their job, but they're not communicating. They're not agreeing with each other, or they're just simply not communicating, period. In my opinion, this is equally as a dangerous vulnerability as all the different implications I mentioned above. These departments should have processes in place that complement each other seamlessly and automatically. Of course, getting to this point is unrealistic, but there needs to be a mutual understanding for the end goal. At the very least, there needs to be a realistic protection plan and universally accepted methodology as to how it will be implemented. Effective attack mitigation is not something that will happen overnight, but in the early stages, decisions can be made to mitigate significant risk and positively impact and protect an organization. Perhaps increase productivity too. For me, I'd start with the most common denominator, email and file storage. For example, a Wall Street Journal article recently reported the number of secure mobile apps companies activated increased 20% in the second quarter over the first quarter. And document editing apps are the most widely used type of apps in the enterprise, period. Mobile is key to the evolution of enterprise technology, as iterations and version control is becoming something of the past. Why implement technology that could take 6 to 8 months to deploy and implement? By day one, it's already obsolete. Embrace cloud technology that is innovative, always up to date, scalable to any level of growth or need for speed, and you pay for what you use from day one and onward. Traditional environments are in no way capable of keeping up to speed of the best of breed tech. Look back to Michael, Sony, Target, and JP Morgan again. I'm not saying the cloud is going to prevent you entirely from any attack, but it certainly can reduce your overhead and maybe help the need for security-minded experts. If you're low on resources and need those security and technology-minded resources available at your fingertips, this is where involving third-party technologies and outsourcing your IT can be critical to your success so that you can focus on your job, your business. Make it part of your plan, audit the organizations you're working with, and ensure that they comply with you, and take advantage of what they already are doing to make your organization better and protect your consumers' data, which is most valuable. The most profound and relevant article I found, though, was a Wall Street Journal interview with Mary Galligan, who is a director with the Cyber Risk Services practice of Deloitte. She previously served as a special agent in charge of cyber and special operations in the Federal Bureau of Investigations, New York. She described that there are two areas that often surprise executives and boards when we talk about cyber threats. Her first was how the government obtains and shares information. This was the most telling because in order to appreciate the risk, understand what already can and is being accessed. Think back to Snowden. Look at everything we learned about the NSA. These things are happening. It's a reality. She also points out that a third party identifies 40% of all cybersecurity breaches. Third party includes law enforcement agency, a financial institution, or a telecom carrier. Most executive boards are likely to assume breaches are internal discoveries that can be silenced before surfacing to the public. Well, that's obviously not true if 40% of all cybersecurity breaches are coming from law enforcement, telecoms, or financial institutions. Gilligan's second point was that executives are surprised by how quickly a breach from a cyber attack can evolve into a business-altering experience. Law enforcement will request access to the infrastructure and then involve legal process. This slows things down and really does damage to your business, in addition to the other financial implications of what can happen here. But bear in mind that while working to resolve or prevent such situations, organizations have the ongoing task of complying with varying state data breaching laws and communicating with shareholders to the public, as well and as operating the business. So clearly, making sure from the onset that working with your developing a team, a security committee, to work and prioritize what is most critical to your business's success, and then start there. Use Dr. Cole's advice and focus on what is critical to your organization, and really take that on first rather than that low-hanging fruit, because the low-hanging fruit is not going to greatly impact your business, even if it looks like an easy task to accomplish. The next one is, what is your disaster recovery plan? Once your security committee sets the standards for the technology, your teams will then need to divide into or maybe create another subset, or perhaps outsource to a partner like Profound Cloud, design a security and training plan. I'm going to talk about the security part first because this is with disaster recovery, and then with training, that's actually another one of the questions I want you to ask yourself. This involves building and planning out the disaster recovery and business continuity plan. The disaster recovery plan will encompass the organization's database and transaction applications. This information will be on demand, so it will require high availability, depending on what your needs are. And it could be expensive, but in the event of a disaster, inconsequential to the potential damage of losing or exposing the organization's critical data. Furthermore, since continuity, or the consistent existence or availability of information, would be in your best interest to select either a multi-region or multi-availability zone disaster recovery plan. We can talk about this a little bit further. For example, once deployed, you'll be able to enhance your organization's durability and not require administrative intervention, especially if you outsource or use third-party applications. If you're going to look to the cloud, it's possible that your vision or mission is to reach a point to have no on-premise server infrastructure, right? That's the vision. But if you're going in this path, consider first looking into something like Amazon Web Services to store an image machine that will copy, recover, and restore your pertinent corporate data to any global point of presence. This type of cloud technology enables your organization to be selective within many geographic areas, with data centers built on different floodplains, weather patterns, power grids, etc. If you've got a center in tornado country, you can account for that and take a snapshot, which is then copied multiple times across the availability zones. For example, Amazon offers 11 nines, which is not only extremely scalable, but makes it durable too. Another consideration for disaster recovery is what you're doing with your regularly accessible data. In other words, your file server. Google, Microsoft, Box, and Dropbox all offer enterprise-level file synchronization and storage solutions. What that does is it translates to anytime, anywhere access to your corporate data. This is a huge movement in cloud technology and should not be taken lightly. TechCrunch recently ran an article on a report held by 451 Research, which surveyed over 1,000 IT professionals in October of 2014. They asked which sync and share tools they use at their companies, and it was discovered that Dropbox was the enterprise leader by far, with more than 40% adoption. There was also OneDrive. Google was in third with 20%. Box was in fourth with just under 15%, and then the rest kind of fell into a 10% realm. But here's where it gets interesting, or rather troubling from my perspective. Of the 40%, only 18% of the IT specialists claim that they're currently paying for that enterprise sync and share product. To me, that means regardless of the solution utilized, enterprises are abandoning best practices of ensuring corporate data is backed by an SLA and supported 24/7. With BYOD is becoming the new norm. For example, Forrester states that today 29% of the global workforce are anytime, anywhere information workers. Those who use 3 or more devices work from multiple locations and use many apps. This number has risen from 23% of the global workforce since 2011 and will continue to rise. And they predict that they'll see 905 million tablets in use for work and home globally by 2017. People are accessing information from multiple devices with multiple platforms, and anytime, anywhere, any device accessibility is critical. This decision impacts everyone in your organization. The consumers have defined the market. There are hundreds of millions of users sharing and syncing files daily. So let's embrace the web and enable your workforce. Look, today's technology leaders face an obvious tension between their staff's desire for freedom and their organization's demand and responsibility for control. We already talked about this. Innovation on the one side, security and policy on the other. Once people see that better technology exists, and I'm talking about your staff, once they know how to be free and innovative, how do you stop them from using it? Because most users aren't malicious or evil. They don't want to threaten their employer. They just want to get their job done. And so they email data to their personal email accounts, or they share something through Dropbox. Clearly, that's what that was just talked about in that TechCrunch article. To work from home and meet their deadlines, they're putting vital information, believe it or not, still on USB sticks, which kind of blows my mind. And then those USB sticks, more than half of us admit that we've lost them. So what's on that data? What if someone picks it up? They're cheap, but who's finding that information? And that's a security leak that you don't want to be dealing with. There's another way. Just look at this presentation I'm giving right now. It's not stored on my laptop. It's stored in the cloud. I edited it on online when I was with my team, and I reviewed it on my iPhone on the bus as I headed into New York this morning. The most critical and often overlooked aspect of web-based application suites is the use of single authentication methods to manage actively. As the staff is delivered a new mail, calendar, or messaging and collaboration platform, administrators are now able to remotely manage and control all device activity through a single point of authentication. Additionally, the recommended application suite offers unlimited storage of mail and data files, right? I'm talking about Google Apps right now. They have delivered a platform that, in our opinion, in our experience, and our customers' experience, far surpasses any of the other leading cloud application suites right now. So if you're using a combination of those pertinent on-premise applications and infrastructure through Amazon, and you're accessing your file server or utilizing your file server through Google Drive and using Gmail and Calendar, you're accessing everything through the web, and you're taking full advantage of the global data centers that Google and Amazon have provided. It's really it's essentially a cloud hybrid approach. So it's not really a question of which cloud are you going to use, which clouds are you going to use, and for what. Take advantage of all of them. Don't discount any of them. You can't just go one way or the other. Look at how different pieces of cloud technology that are available, which are many, and find a way that'll help prevent you from being in a disaster situation. For example, at Profound Cloud, during Hurricane Sandy, we were out. We're on 39th Street, and there was no power to the building. Couldn't even use our cards to get in because there was no power. But because we were on Google Apps, we had access to to our file server, which was Google Drive. We had access to our email. We could communicate with contacts, our customers, and we were able to hold video conferences through our mobile devices. This is an enterprise-level solution that kept our business running during a disaster. Please consider these. So the next one is, what are you doing to educate your staff? This is so critical. 95% of security incidents investigated by IBM in 2013 involved human error. Let me say that again. 95% of security incidents investigated by IBM in 2013 involved human error. Your organization must consider outsourcing to a post-migration support-minded expert like Profound Cloud. And really consider the solutions that we work with and advocate for the benefit of your own business. We work with your marketing department or do the work for you and design a user-friendly security awareness training and best practice initiative. This would include monthly webinars on personal security, corporate security vision, and best practices when communicating and collaborating on the organization's technology. It is not the responsibility, though, of the non-technical staff to understand the specifics of the technologies, right? You don't need your general staff to know. I mean, basically, any staff member that's outside the security team, with the exception of leadership, doesn't really need to know what security programs you have in place. However, it is in your organization's best interest to educate and ensure that all human beings access business critical information that is highly sensitive and are constantly aware of what they should and should not do as they perform their work in daily tasks. For example, I talked about how people forward email information and attachments so they can work from home. Well, obviously, that's not a best practice. There's two solutions right off the bat. One, implement or deploy a solution that would de-encourage organizations or staff members to feel they need to do that. Give them the technology that allows them to have that accessibility, whether they're commuting or traveling. They always have access to their data at their fingertips while you're administrating it. Let's use Target again as an example. In 2013, right? At the heart of the holiday season, they publicly confirmed that the credit and debit accounts of 40 million customers have been compromised. This deeply impacted and exposed the real danger of entrusting businesses with so much data. That's a report that was from, I believe that was from the New York Times or Wall Street Journal. We must teach our staff on the importance of not just following internal security best practices, but also reward and encourage staff to be more personally responsible for their own data. Again, there was 40 million credit and debit card accounts between November 27th and December 15th. And then January 10th said hackers also stole personal information, which includes names, phone numbers, as well as email mailing addresses from as many as 70 million customers. When the tally is in, Target's breach may eclipse the biggest known data breach as a retailer. One disclosed in 2007 at the parent company of TJ Maxx that affected 90 million records. Very simply, organizations that make an investment to educate and advocate the importance of data protection to their staff will reduce the risk of cybercrime. There are vulnerabilities within, simple passwords. And so you may have the best technology in place at your organization, but if you're not educating and ensuring that all of your staff members are using their own personal best practices, they're going to be a vulnerability and a security risk through the BYO programs that are available now. If I bring my Mac into the office and I don't have, a secure password and I log into my account, what's preventing someone else from being able to do that very easily? If my iPhone or my Android tablet are not password protected and require two-factor authentication from other devices, what's preventing someone from getting access to that information? But by advocating these best practices, by implementing this type of technology, and by showing and rewarding your staff that, look, not only do we want you to protect the corporate information, but we want you to understand that your information is protected too, so that if a target was to happen again, you're less likely to be part of the issue because you were following best practices. So here's a question too. What have you invested in order to monitor the machines accessing your data? This is crazy. There are organizations that we work with at times, that I've worked with in the past, prospects that don't have really any real understanding or inventory of the workstations and machines that are accessing their corporate data. In 2005, Gartner analyst Ivana Littman concluded that for every $5.62 spent by businesses after a breach could instead be $1 by utilizing encryption and network protection. This would prevent intrusions and allow for minimal damage. Unfortunately, these estimates are still accurate in 2014. In 2013, Dennis Technology Labs ranked Kaspersky Endpoint Security first when compared to Symantec, Microsoft, Trend Micro, and McAfee VirusScan. So take a look at Kaspersky. They've got some incredible solutions out there. An endpoint security application will automate some of the core functions required to monitor and protect the network systems, people, and information. Make the choice to implement this type of software or hire a managed service provider like Profound Cloud, whose job it is to monitor, update, and perform maintenance to your systems and machines. Also, they take inventory and understand all machines, mobile or on-premise, that are accessing and authenticating to corporate data. It's a huge headache and a major workflow hurdle when the implications of updating or not updating and patching a corporate machine are overlooked, or at the very least, not part of a well thought out and universally agreed process. So, first, we look at the machines, and now let's look at what have you invested in to monitor inbound network traffic. Let's go back to the SANS 20. There's critical security control number 10 actually is implicit on the importance of protection through the use of firewalls, routers, and access points in order to prevent against network intrusion. Hackers are taking full advantage of vulnerable network devices as implementations are increasingly more focused on speed of deployment and less on security. Look, I understand that we're everyone's fast paced. Everyone wants everything right now, today. We got to move forward, but without the proper, plan in place, or without working with an organization that can act quickly and implement a security minded plan, the vulnerabilities increase rapidly. It is our intention at Profound Cloud to deliver both a high output of accessibility and speed while focusing also on hardened security. It's what we do. Former SEC Chair Mary Shapiro actually commented on the importance, or rather responsibility, for organizations to buckle down and tighten security measures by saying, "We know that technology has pitfalls, and when it doesn't work quite right, the consequences can be severe. Just imagine what can happen if an automated traffic light flashes green rather than red, if a wing flap on a plane goes up rather than down, if a railroad track switches and sends the train right rather than left." Protect your pipes. This is the information. This is how you're accessing all this information. It is in your best interest to really consider an intrusion detection system. There are so many different monitoring systems out there, such as Kaspersky, as I mentioned too. And there's many. Actually, if you look up SANS 20 critical security controls, they actually have recommendation software and hardware that really plays well to critical number 10, critical control number 10, which is the importance of protection through the use of firewalls, routers, and access points. This is something that's really critical. And again, or you could call someone like Profound Cloud and we'll work with you. We have a vast experience working with SonicWall and other, different types of machines and software that really can provide cost-effective security for your organization. It is so important to do that. Have the conversation with us. We welcome it. So this says it all, right? Audit, educate, advocate, and then train. And I separate educate from training because you need to understand what technology you're using in order to train on how to use it within the organization. Just because I use one application, it doesn't mean that that's going to be how everyone uses the application. So you need to educate yourself on what it can do before you train. And that's, again, where Profound Cloud comes in. Our services are designed around post-migration support. So after implementing or deciding on where to go, that's when we come in and really try to evolve the experience to your staff and to your leadership, okay? CEOs are addressing grave concern for the protection of their data, and the concerns are valid. Patricia Wexler, a spokeswoman of JP Morgan, who was recently hacked, said companies of our size unfortunately experience cyber attacks nearly every day. And then Joshua Campbell, an FBI spokesman, said combating cyber threats and criminals remains a top priority for the United States government. So seeking adequate and backed solutions that meet the regulations and standards will mitigate the risk of compliance and regulation while designing an implementation policy, training the staff, and deploying technologies. As your organization faces an impending system upgrade, our recommended approach is to take the security practice to a cloud-based model. It will reduce IT cost overhead, meet compliance standards, and deliver the dynamic approach demanded by today's influx of cybercrime. Initiating a cloud-based approach will reduce the CEO of the burden of managing the on-premise infrastructure and be more strategically minded about security capabilities. So by implementing this cloud technology, you're opening up the ever-changing landscape of technology, you're making yourselves less vulnerable and more cost-effective. And that reduces the burden on the CEO and the ownership and leadership so that they can spend the right time to focus on those security plannings that are really required these days. As we mentioned earlier, work has changed and so should the mindset. People are accessing information from multiple devices with multiple platforms, and anytime, anywhere, any device, accessibility is critical. Whether you're an iPhone user, a Mac user, a PC user, a Windows Phone user, a Android user, you need to have access to not just your mail and calendar and contacts, but your critical data. And you want, from a company and corporate perspective, to be able to mandate, manage, and administer the right security precautions and systems monitoring solutions so that you can give them the best of breed technology while also maintaining that hardened security infrastructure. This decision impacts everyone, as I mentioned before, and promotes enormous implications should the organization not move forward with a platform which delivers the accessibility demanded by the staff. Further, the consumers have defined the market, right? So let's embrace the web with a security-minded plan and enable your workforce. So work with us. We've had countless experience in making this switch and highly recommend you consider our methodologies. We are task-driven process creators. It is in our blood, in our DNA. From monitoring your systems to implementing a cloud technology solution, our business is designed to support and assist in enhancing your overall technology landscape. So if you have security as top of mind and you're looking to go to the cloud, please give us a call. Send me an email, jason@profoundcloud.com, or do your own research and go to profoundcloud.com and take a look at what we have to offer. We have multiple webinars. We have multiple best practices. We talked about file synchronization and how that's expanding. We've done security. We've done white papers on using a flat file structure and using Google Drive as your file server. We use it here. We eat our own dog food, so we understand how it works, and we've designed a really interesting take. I've talked a lot about Google, but let's not discount Microsoft too. Their CEO has done amazing things lately in terms of trying to evolve the landscape of what Microsoft offers as a cloud solution with the cloud-first mentality. And I'm seeing it happen. It's really interesting stuff. And we put together a documentation on Google Apps versus 365. If you're looking to update and you're not sure which makes more sense to your organization, Google Apps or Microsoft Office 365, take a look at what we have to say. We're not going to tell you which is right based off of our document, but we're going to give you all the tool sets needed in order to make a decision for your organization. And then, of course, you can work with us and we can help you prove that out. I welcome the conversation and hope that this has been very helpful in terms of designing and implementing a security plan. If you're going to embrace the cloud, you must be security minded.